I'm going to have to leave the meeting at 6:45.
Okay, thank you ever so much. Any other apologies for absence?
Chair, I've got no other apologies for absence, but I'd just like to advise those who are on the call, who are remote, that we've got Councillor Ian Johnson in the chamber and Councillor Ewan Goodjohn in the chamber, 2 officers as well, and then obviously we've got members online, and I understand the Councillor Franks may also be slightly late and may join remotely as well. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much, Karen. So if we move on to agenda item 2, these are the minutes of the meeting, our last meeting that was held on the 19th of June. I'm sure committee have all read and digested the contents. So if we're happy with what's been recorded, can I have a hand to move, please? Thank you, Councillor Hanks and Councillor Drake. Thank you very much. Agenda item 3 then. This is to receive declarations of interest and the nature of such interests. Do we have any members with the declaration for tonight, please? Okay.
Sorry, Chair, I should make the same declaration that I made at Learning and Culture regarding CAVC, a personal interest that at the time that the report is covering, I was a student at Cardiff Vale College, which is mentioned in the report multiple times. However, I have no personal financial gain from this, so it's only a personal interest, and I will speak and vote on the matter at hand.
Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Okay, no other declarations tonight, so we'll move on to agenda item 4. This is our first reference from Cabinet that sat on the 20th of June. It's the Q4 Sickness Absent Report 23-24, and I believe we've got Laith here with us tonight to take us through the report. Thank you, Laith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, members. Yeah, if you can share, thank you, Mark, and then we'll. I'm just going to run through the report and just pick out some key points as we've done previously in other reports. So again, as you've mentioned, Chair, this is the end of year report for 2023-24, and we'll just start with the headline figure where, compared to the data from the previous year of 2022-23, absence is reduced from 12.8 FTE days to the current figure as at the end of the 23-24 to 10.3 FTE days. So quite a significant reduction on the previous year. Appreciate we were coming out of the sort of COVID pandemic, etc., and therefore feel as though we're heading back to where we were sort of previously as an authority. What I wanted to do as part of this report as well was to concentrate a little bit, I suppose, about the work that we do within our occupational health teams and our business partner teams on the way we support the managers and the council around dealing with absence with the authority. Just to give a bit of background, I suppose. We obviously, again, from a manager's perspective, line managers, again, are instrumental in looking after employees' health and well-being and dealing with their absence. But again, actually, without the support from our occupational health teams and business partner teams, again, they're crucial in supporting managers in managing the many different types of absence cases we have in the council, which again, some cases are very complex around certain health sort of conditions. And again, it's about working together as an authority and teams as well. So again, the HR business partners, again, they work specifically with the managers on individual absence cases. And again, trying to concentrate a lot around the long-term absence sort of cases within the authority. That's on the basis that approximately 70% of our absences within the council are long-term sickness. So it makes sense to concentrate on those long-term absence cases. Again, I suppose for the welfare of the employees themselves, but also from an absence perspective, where that helps reduce the overall sort of sickness rates in the council. So there's a dual purpose of that. And again, when you're reviewing long-term absence cases, there's various routes you can go down for managing those things. Again, working with our occupational health teams to support with issues around counselling and again making sure that they get referred appropriately to GPs or other medical sort of provision, and and then coming up with different options to get individuals back to work, and whether that's things like phased return to work processes and everything surrounding that individual to get them back into the workplace, and so on. So if I just move again just quickly to 4.5, I think we've mentioned previously, again in previous scrutiny committees, where we had Care First as our employee assistance programme provider. I think we explained before that we used to run secret shopper exercises on the basis that we weren't exactly always happy with the previous service that we had. So actually, since November 23, we've actually moved to a different provider called Westfield Health. And again, early indications are that service is obviously, again, a lot better. But it's so new. What we'll try and do is provide some information on how that service is working, probably at the next 6 monthly report towards the end of the year. But again, I think it's a good move. Again, from the council perspective, that we just don't run these services and let them run and see what happens. We're actually monitoring them, and if they're not working, then again we've taken an opportunity to move to a new provider, and hopefully again providing a much better service for our employees. Again, from an occupational health perspective, again 5.1 on the report, we once again had undertaken back in October, November time around 2,000 vaccinations across the organisation, which includes a lot with our frontline services within our waste services, social services and schools. So again, actually, we're already in the process now of working out our next plan of action to do the flu vaccinations again in the autumn of 24, which we're looking at around 2,000-ish vaccinations across the council, and again that's a really vital thing again for the organisation. And again, 5.2. We will be launching our new occupational health booking system. I think we've mentioned that before, but we're now live with that system, and we're going to roll it out between now and November. We're going to start small and make sure that the booking system is working effectively, and it's very similar to a booking system that you find in your GP and things, where they monitor appointments and sending out reminders again for people to attend appointments. So hopefully the reduction in the no-shows or late notifications from staff again should reduce and manage our appointment process. Okay. If I move to 5.7, I think it's worth mentioning again in terms of our occupational health team. It's likely that our occupational health nurse is likely to reduce the number of hours that they work towards the end of the year, around September, October time. So I think what that will provide us with a bit of an opportunity to review our service within the team. I think we undertake so many other different types of activities within that role within the nurse. We do things like hand-arm vibration assessments, or HAVs as they are called. We do hearing assessments for staff in those types of roles. We obviously do the flu jabs, but we also do hepatitis A and hepatitis B jabs again for some of our frontline workers. Now, not always we need a fully qualified occupational health nurse to undertake those activities. So what we can do is maybe utilise that reduction in hours, and say we're left with 2 days a week left on that. We could actually maybe appoint someone on 3 days a week who can just concentrate on some of those activities around hearing assessments and vibration tests and jabbing staff. So again, it's just trying to utilise a much better way of how we operate the service. So again, we'll obviously review those options as we move closer to that period, and so on. And again, as part of 5.7, again, just to explain, obviously we know we've got our health champions across the council that we're obviously supporting staff with any questions that they have. If I just swap over the tab, which I'm hoping it will work on here because it will show on there. We've recently launched My Vale Rewards site, and what that is, again, it's available to all staff, and actually you don't need to have a work computer to do it. This is available externally as well, so our frontline workers can access this, but obviously we'll do a bit of communications around this. And what we've done is almost put everything in one place around sort of rewarding our employees, around pay and reward, around volunteering, the staff networks that we have, links to OD and learning. It says there's obviously sustainability around access to our cycle to work scheme, hybrid working, and things like that. And again, information on employee wellbeing, and again, linking to our employee assistance program and other things that we're doing. So again, it's work in progress, but hopefully again having a single place where all staff can access all those activities around reward recognition. Again, is probably really useful and something that we're hoping to launch a bit further over the coming months. So what I'll do, if I just move directly to the Appendix A, which I know obviously is usually quite interesting from an overview perspective around our absence. Appreciate it's probably a little bit small, so I'll try and make it a little bit bigger. What this does is provide information around all the different directorates and services in the council. Again, provide information on the FTE days lost per person in each of the services. And as mentioned before, again, if you scroll to the bottom, we've got the overall figure of 10.3 FTE days sort of lost for the council. I'm sure there'll be further questions later on when we open it up to the members anyway. And then finally, again, I just want to go through every single page because some of it does repeat from that first sort of page. If I just do the overview, sort of on there, I think it's always quite useful sort of discussion around this one, where we appreciate from a council-wide perspective the short-term absence main reason is viral infection, which again is not surprising around that, and the highest level for long-term is non-work related stress, and again that's again speaking from previous reports, that is again usually the case, although you can see the percentage of non-work related stress is now on average for long-term around 20%, which is reduced from the previous 2023 figures 31%. So again, big improvement on that, and even actually work-related stress has actually dropped down to 5th position on the long term, as well as the overall absence again for the council. So I'd like to say that I suppose a lot of the work we're doing around the support from the occupational health team and business partners, and trying to increase the work around the rewards and recognition side of things. Again, hopefully that's again improving the picture corporately. I don't think there was anything specifically I wanted to raise sort of on the report. Obviously the data's there as it states, but just wanted to give you a quick overview of where we are, and I'm happy to open up any questions to members. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Laith. And yes, good news that 6 absences is trending downwards. That's really good news. I'm interested to also have a report in 6 months' time that could be come back to this committee, please, on how Westfield Health are doing. I note they started the contract with us on the 1st of November, 8 months ago, but also we've said that we're still transitioning. So I mean, I'd like to know if we have issues with this transition period, if we expected it to take this long. That would be really good. I'll bring Councillor Carroll in now at this stage, though, because he has his hand up, and then we can talk some more. Thank you. Councillor
Yes,
Powell.
thank you, Chair, and thank you, Laith, for the presentation. I just wanted to draw your attention to the sickness by age range, particularly the age 16 to 25 age group, where 23.17 days were lost per person. That seems to me to be extraordinarily high. That's almost 1 in 4 days lost. Sickness absence, and perhaps even more concerning is the fact that the age 16 to 25 age group, which is obviously the youngest and probably the age group that one would assume would be the most in the best physical condition, so to speak, being the youngest, I find it quite astonishing that that's the one that is by far losing the most days. And I think that some work needs to be done to establish why that is and the reasons that are being cited for sickness absence, particularly since the 65 plus age group, which is obviously the oldest and the, without obviously wishing to cast aspersions, I think people may expect the older people are, the more likely they may be to succumb to certain to health problems, being the lowest in terms of days lost per person. So I think we need to establish exactly why that is the case.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Laith, do you have any further information behind some of those levels of absences with the demographics of age? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Carroll, for the question. I think we need to come back on those. I think actually, looking at the figures very quickly, I wonder whether the last column has accidentally been sorted in the wrong way. So apologies for that, and well spotted. I think what we'll do, I'll need to go back, just double check those figures, and looking at it, I would say that the 16 to 25-year-old is nearer the 4% and 23% for the 65 plus. Looking at that sort of straight away, so apologies for that, and we'll get that corrected. But as you say, whichever way around it is, when we're still looking at 23%, or FTE days lost per person for even 65 plus, that's still a high figure, and we can certainly look at some of those reasons.
No, thank you for that, Laith. If you could clarify, that would be appreciated.
Certainly.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Carroll.
And did you want me to come in on the Westfield Health situation?
That would be, yes, please. That would be great. Thank you.
Oh, and let's, Tracy. I think you're right. The report mentions about the transition. I think the transition period was meant to be related to the early phase of moving over from the first provider. So that I would say that the transition period has probably ended now, and then we're fully utilising Westfield Health. And again, we can feed that back as part of our report towards the end of the year.
That's smashing. Thanks ever so much for clarifying that. Councillor Wood, you have your hand up. Councillor Wood, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're coming on loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay. I was just looking at the drill down reasons for the absenteeism, and I see we've introduced other, which wasn't there for 21 and 22, and it does make up quite a large percentage of some of the reasoning behind being absent. So while we're saying it's trending down, now we have a large catch-all of other. I wonder why that was introduced. And then, presumably to be off long-term sick, you have to provide a sick note. So how can other be such an enormous number if we've drilled down in so much detail into so many reasons behind being absent? And then we have other, which is taking up 13%, 25% and things like this in some of the measures. It seems we've got some really good detailed data, and now we've gone and introduced other, which now gives us very non-specific reasoning for absenteeism.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Laith or Tracy? Tracy, would you like to answer that? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to answer your question in relation to other, the other category has always been there. It's just that we are seeing a higher propensity of tick boxing other, if you like. So what we've been looking at doing, and we'll be able to provide further context behind this at the next report with absence, is drill down into the reasons for other. What's happening is they're not being captured by the broader reasons that we've got, i.e. they're not falling into those categories of sickness absence, and therefore the other category is being used higher than it ever has in the past. What we're looking at doing is broadening some of the reasons for absence so that we'll be able to categorise some of those 13% into different categories moving forward. So you will see a longer list of reasons for absence, and hopefully that will reduce the propensity to tick other as an absence category moving forward. That might not be something that we'll be able to do overnight, but we may certainly be able to come back in 6 months to just give an explanation of how those 13% are falling, if that makes sense. Chair, if you don't mind, I was also just going to come in on the Westfield Health transition, just to give a little bit more clarity on it. We never kept both Westfield Health and Care First open together. So we did move across from Care First onto Westfield Health very quickly. So for all new members of staff, it is Westfield Health, and it's Westfield Health that we're using. We left Care First open for perhaps existing personnel that may have been using their services so that they had consistency of service, and we weren't changing that. Insofar as we know that isn't the case anymore, but that's the reason for the transition. It wasn't that we had this kind of elongated period where both were in operation. We did end agreement with one and commence agreement with the other, but we didn't want those that had previously been utilising the service to have that consistency pulled at short notice, if that makes a bit more sense as well.
Yes, it does, and perfectly understandable why you would want to keep the continuity for people. Thank you. Councillor Wood, are you coming back on your question?
Yeah, if I could. Yeah,
yes, of course you can. Yeah, please do.
I was just curious because obviously looking at the data in the 2 previous years, we hadn't actually asked other, and all of a sudden we've asked it, and we've got some rather large numbers for it. And I understand, yeah, people will use a catch-all if they can, but it's not helping us to identify any reasons or logic. And then also, yeah, to be signed off on long-term sick, presumably you need I mean, maybe they are all others, but we have an awful lot of reasons for absenteeism in, I don't know, 17 or 18 or 20 different categories. I understand how it can happen. It just seems like an awful, seems a shame to have introduced it and to have it generate such an enormous amount of data. And now we have a big pond of people, a big group of people that aren't described at all for logic, for reasons of absenteeism. So any detail we can get on that going forward would be very helpful.
Yes, thank you. I concur. I mean, I guess the question would be, do we need to have a box that says other? Do we have to have a box that says other? I don't know, Tracy. What do you feel about that?
I think until we've explored those that are specifying their absence as other, we've not just introduced the other category. Other category has always been there. What we have seen is a higher propensity of users for other. So we'll go away and explore, and we're doing some work in this space already, why that is, and potentially include other categories that perhaps are being used for that other box currently. All absences over 7 days are medically certificated, so all will have a reason for absence. There is a very rare occasion where the explanation or descriptor of absence isn't given, or it's provided as a kind of other or kind of confidential response. They are extremely rare. most cases of certificated absence will give a clear reason for their absence, or will say under investigation. And it's possible that those under investigation are then in an absence category categorised as other, and maybe just by including under investigation, we might be able to reduce the utilisation of other. I think once we've done that piece of work, Chair, if that's okay, we can come back and say, actually, we think we just need to remove the other now, and just see if we get any further queries from line managers that say, what do we categorise this as? If there's would that be okay?
Yes, Councillor Wood, are you happy with that? I'm happy with that. That sounds sensible approach. Yeah.
I think so. I mean, if you look at how this report was structured 2 years ago, me as a new councillor, the first time I saw it, we asked for more detail. We've got more detail. I'm just noticing in the aggregate number at the top, in the very first table, it shows 2022, other was 0. Now, whether that's a typo, I don't know, but we seem to have introduced it, and it now makes up 15% or 14%, let's say, of the total. So it's 1 in 8 or 1 in 6 and a bit of days absent is now other. So we've created just a big load of data that we can't do anything with anymore, because we've come up with plans for mental health, because that was the last statistical number. Now we are being told that there's been some improvement, which I can take at face value, but now we have other to make plans for. You can't solve other without knowing what it is. That's my only reasoning for saying it.
Yeah. So we'll await some further investigation on that one. That's great. Thank you. Councillor Lovelock Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments. It's good to see, as Councillor Wood just referenced, that we've drilled down on stress and sort of mental health issues in particular. And we were mindful of this last year. And I just wanted to ask a question in terms of stress risk assessments and stress management. And having been someone who supported workers in other sectors who used Care First, they never usually filled me with any great hope that they were experts in the mental health field. So what assurances have you been given that when you refer someone to OC Health, to the new provider, that they are speaking to someone who has that ability to give sort of expert opinion to guide the employer and HR in terms of the advice and support that individual needs to ensure that their time off from work is sort of not exacerbated in any shape or form? And another question: who currently undertakes the production and the completion of risk assessments within the workplace? Is it sort of a specialist health and safety officer, or is it the manager in conjunction with the employee? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions. Tracy, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. I'll answer the stress risk assessment one first, if that's okay, because that's probably the easiest one in terms of response to. So the stress risk assessments are done in partnership with our health and safety and wellbeing team. So there is a kind of specialist person that will assist in that process. We would always encourage a line manager to utilise that service and utilise the service of the HR business partner team and OC Health team as well. So it should be the case that if a stress risk assessment is undertaken, it's done in partnership with the individual, the health, safety and wellbeing team and occupational health. That would be deemed best practice. I can't say that happens 100% of the time, but we would like to see, we'd like to capture those that perhaps it doesn't. So that's the process. That's what should be happening from a stress risk assessment perspective. In terms of Westfield Health, can I just clarify, Chair, Belinda's question, Councillor Lovelock Evans's question. So Westfield Health is our 24-hour EAP provision. It's provided as a bolt-on support with occupational health. So is the question particular to Westfield Health, or is it in relation to both our occupational health service and Westfield Health Service. They're both separate but offered in partnership, if that makes sense.
Chair, you're on mute, sorry.
Sorry, on mute. I think it was more, Tracy, to do with the link between Westfield, the provider, in terms of that EAP provider, and then occupational health. Is there any linkage to ensure that the member of staff who is being referred to Occ Health because of stress is given that expert sort of and practical support rather than a more generalist approach in terms of long-term absence? Does that make sense? I hope so.
Yeah, I think it does, Councillor Liverell covered. So I'll answer it as best I can. And if I'm lacking in some way, please do let me know. So in terms of Care First and Westfield Health, they are managed by our occupational health team and our health, safety and wellbeing team. So they conduct regular reviews, and they did conduct regular reviews in both terms of Care First and now Westfield Health. We did feedback to Care First on a number of occasions before we ceased with the service, that actually we weren't happy with the feedback that was coming forward from some of our staff members, that perhaps the provision was lacking in some areas, and unfortunately it wasn't something that they were able to do anything about, or certainly not to the standard or offering that we were seeking. So we've moved to Westfield Health, and we're doing exactly the same with regular meetings with our health, safety and wellbeing manager and our occupational health team. Early indications in terms of feedback in that space are more positive, and we are hoping that will continue. We've entered into a shortened contract with them than we did with Care First, which was longer in duration, deliberately so that we can ensure that the service is what we are seeking before we seek to look at any more longer term arrangement. Westfield Health, apologies, their service has its limitations. So counselling support services, for instance, have their limitations and often are resulting in kind of a signposting to more specialist provisions depending on the nature of the call that comes through. Our occupational health services are probably more bespoke and more detailed, and we have counselling provision also within the occupational health service. So if an individual is contacting Westfield Health out of hours, they can seek counselling support there. If they're coming through to our occupational health team, we can also provide counselling support probably to a more comprehensive level through our occupational health service. Does that make sense, and does that answer the question?
Absolutely makes sense, Tracy, thank you. And that's really good to know in terms of the relationship that you have with Westfield going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lovelock-Edwards and Tracy. Do we have any other questions on the report? Councillor Johnson, over to you.
Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to give everybody a moment to put the headsets on. Just making sure that Tracy and Laith can hear me okay. Just checking whether the headsets are working for Tracy, as she'll be the one who will need to respond to the question most likely. Okay, is everything working? I just wanted to follow up on the mental health question there, provision and support for mental health. We've heard through the report about some of the more formal things that we do to support people who work in the council, but I just wanted to go to 5.7 of the report, talking about the number of people who've received training as mental health champions within the council or that type of role. I'm familiar with time for change work. I've done work with them in the past. So I just wanted to know, I know the training in the first instance includes a day or two of work to get them. So I just wanted to gain some sort of understanding in terms of how this scheme is continuing and is ongoing after people do the initial training. So when there's a series of activity, for example, promoting International Mental Health Day and that type of thing, how many people continue to take part in these types of activities? I take it that some members of staff may have left the council, some may have decided that they no longer wish to take part. So I don't know whether there's a way for us to be updated in terms of plans for training new people in future, and also keeping that interest of people who've already taken part. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. It's a good question. And I think it would be really interesting to see what those 30 mental health champions do exactly and how we keep that momentum going. So I'll hand over to Tracy because I'm sure she's going to tell us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It is a challenge. I'll be honest. It's a challenge to keep the momentum going. And Councillor Johnson may or may not be aware that actually the lead of that team has moved on recently from a promotional perspective. And actually they were fantastic in terms of maintaining the momentum and continuing to put meaningful events on that were gaining traction. We believe we've got a replacement for that position, and that will hopefully re-energise the project, which has dipped slightly over the last couple of months. When I say dip, that doesn't mean that we've lost the interest of the current champions, but actually we do need to find a equally energised person to take that forward to the next stage, really, in the process. So I'm hopeful that over the next month to 6 weeks that we'll see that come to fruition a little bit. We're always keen for further champions to come forward, and some of the well, not some, actually the majority of those champions do an incredibly good job, but you're absolutely right. We do need to continue to keep the momentum going. It's an ongoing challenge, and it came with a level of sadness, certainly for me, that the person that was leading that work has got fantastic promotional opportunity for them, but it's meant we lost a fantastic advocate for us. So, but hopefully moving forward, we will be able to put that replacement in place with a new recharged energy moving forward. I'm more than happy, Chair, to come back in the next kind of 6 months when we bring this report back, hopefully with the news that has picked up and that's kind of re-energised again, if that would be useful to you, Councillor Johnson.
I think that would be great, Tracy, and I'd also, I think committee would benefit from hearing of the work that those 30 mental health champions have been doing, because that's quite important, I think, to understand the importance of their roles. Councillor Johnson, come back in.
Thank you. Sorry, people have taken their headsets off. The point in relation to champions, in terms of well-being and mental health, is that they're members of a team, and it depends to some extent on their enthusiasm to work together as a cohort. And this is how this differs quite a bit to buying something into the council. So this is quite a broad number, and the evidence, if I remember, demonstrates that you need a fairly large number, because people obviously come in and leave, and people may become more or less enthusiastic over time. I understand that this can be difficult to manage because this is meant to be staff-led as opposed to being based on the department's work in terms of something to be delivered. So I understand the challenge, but the investment is very valuable. And as Tracy has touched on, or has proposed, it would be good to hear a little bit more outside of this forum. One of the things that champions say is they talk about their personal story and their personal mental health experiences. So perhaps that's something that the committee could see, or members of the council could see in future. I don't know if there's something which it would be something that could be possible for members of the group or members generally. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that insight as well, Councillor Johnson. Do we have any other questions, please? Okay, there's only one more for me, and it was just on one of our pie charts. It was the pie chart on the stress at work. In a very similar vein, I guess, to the question that Councillor Wood has raised, it seems that 3/4 of the cases in that pie chart are identified as just stress at work, and there's no further description. And I'm just wondering, seeing as we need to know if, what exactly is the crux cause of the stress at work, how we can mitigate it or how we can remove that stress if possible. Again, should we have line managers getting to the root of the cause of the stress at work so we can get a description on there? Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, we could certainly look at whether we're able to drill down further on that data. I think the challenge is always going to be that we report this data based on what a medical certificate would say, and then on occasions we're able to provide greater context behind that once we've had management discussions. I would seek to reassure this group that whenever anyone is absent, whatever the medical reason for the absence, that under our management of attendance policy, there is a kind of strict and robust structure of meetings that needs to take place between a line manager and a individual in terms of seeking to bring that individual back into work in a supportive way, and alleviate any kind of possible future exacerbation of the stress. It can often be multifaceted though, so I'm not sure how possible it would be to get an accurate breakdown of that wider population, but we can seek to see what we can do with that, Chair, if that's helpful. It may be that we're given a kind of broader category for, I think it's 76, isn't it, that fall into that kind of generic group. But it could be that we're coming back to say, actually, it's a mix of capacity, line management or team working relationship. It might not just be for one specific reason. Quite often what we do see when we get a medical certificate for stress at work is that while stress at work may be the straw, if I can describe it in that way, quite often there's also elements of home stress or personal stress that accompanies that as well, but predominantly it may be down to stress at work. So, and that often comes from further exploration and discussion with the line My aim and the aim of the team really would be to proactively reduce those occurrences in the first place. So by seeking to provide a working environment which reduces an individual's need to take absence, really, that we're providing mitigations prior to that, utilising stress risk assessments, for example, to reduce the need for an individual to take a period of absence. I totally understand that's not always the case. So I suppose in a long-winded way, apologies, Chair, what I'm saying is we'll seek to go back and look at those 76, but it may be that the reason for that stress at work isn't just down to one element, but it is multifaceted.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. Okay, do we have any other questions before we move on to the recommendations? No? Okay, that's great. Thank you, everybody. That was quite a good discussion there. So the recommendations were that our comments are referred back to Cabinet, and we have a number here, if that's okay, Karen. So and actually some actions, they weren't just comments in the end. So we wanted to have a little bit more data and more information on the other box, exactly what is behind the other, if that's possible. I think that, Laith, you said that you were going to have another look at the figures for clarity for the 18 to 24 and the 65 plus group, because there may be a bit of a typo on that. And then in 6 months' time, we're hoping for a report that highlights the progress of the implementation of the Westfield Health provider, and also some more information on how we're doing with the 30 mental health champions, and report on all of the good work that they're doing. I think that was about it. So thank you very much. If everybody's happy with that, can we have a hand to move, please?
Happy to move, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Wood, that's brilliant. Are you moving or are you asking another question? Moving, I think. Great, thank you. Right then, let's move on to agenda item 5,
Chair,
which is the... Oh, sorry, go on, Karen.
Sorry, before we move on, Chair, can I just mention that Councillor Franks has joined us? And can I ask Councillor Franks, has he got any declarations of interest for the next items on the agenda, please?
We'll take the silence as no, if that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll do that then, thanks.
Yeah. Marvellous. So agenda item 5. This is the Vale of Glamorgan annual audit summary from 2023. It's the report from the Auditor General Wales outlining the work that they've completed since the last audit summary, which was issued, I think, March 2023. And I think we've got 11 recommendations, and it's over to Tom Bowring to take us through. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Good evening, committee. Thanks for taking this reference. As you say, Chair, this is the annual audit summary for 2023. It's produced by the Auditor General, so Head of Audit Wales, and it outlines the work that has been undertaken in the past year. The report itself is generally positive in terms of the key conclusions which have been reached. Just in summary, in relation to the audit of accounts, the Auditor General gave an unqualified, true and fair opinion of the financial statements for 22-23, and also indicated that the annual governance statement had been prepared in line with the relevant CIPFA code and guidance. There were 11 recommendations that the Audit Wales made throughout the year, and they related to specific local reviews of the Vale of Glamorgan Council. So a couple of recommendations in terms of the use of performance information, 5 recommendations relating to the digital strategy review, 2 recommendations relating to the application of the Sustainable Development Principle in service areas, and also 2 recommendations relating to the Planning Services Governance Arrangements review that was undertaken. Throughout the year, in line with the Council's corporate performance arrangements, we've brought these reports following consideration by relevant service areas to the scrutiny committees and then on to Governance and Audit Committee. The recommendations are tracked throughout the year as part of the Strategic Insight Board's work, and that's reported to the Strategic Leadership Team. You'll also note that committees receive regular updates, and the Governance and Audit Committee receive a 6-monthly update, as well as an overall summary as part of the annual self-assessment report. I thought it was useful as well to draw attention to the committee and to the section relating to the planned work for 23-24. Audit Wales always undertake a piece of work around assurance and risk assessment, where they look at areas that perhaps they haven't examined for a number of years within the council, or issues arising from performance related matters. And during the year, they're undertaking some work on a financial sustainability thematic review. They're doing that across all 22 local authorities. They're also undertaking a national study relating to commissioning, and an update on the first quarter's performance against Audit Wales's plan will be presented by Audit Wales at tomorrow evening's Governance and Audit Committee. Your committee chair have seen all of those individual reports, with the exception of the planning service governance arrangements one throughout the year. So this is really just a housekeeping report to bring committee up to date as at the end of the year.
Thank you for that, Tom. As you say, it's largely positive. There was one particular recommendation that has stood out, and we've talked about this a few times. So I guess I can ask quite a general question, which I hope won't be too difficult. So a few months on, what are we now doing to ensure performance information provides senior leaders with a more comprehensive understanding of the service user's perspective, if I may? Thank you.
Certainly, Chair, no problem at all. Most notably, the work relating to the Let's Talk About Life in the Vale survey has been shared very widely, both with committees but also within the council. So we've been sharing that at Strategic Leadership Team, the Strategic Insight Board, and also through a range of other forums as well, in order to make sure that that information is being disseminated and responded to. Cabinet will consider tomorrow a report relating to an update to the public participation strategy in response to Let's Talk About Life in the Vale, and that will set out a series of reprioritised actions, which in part relates to sharing that information and making sure, importantly, that it's also being used. We've also recently completed the first phase of the annual self-assessment work, so we've undertaken the 5 directorate level self-assessments. Those self-assessments contain one theme around the use of service user insight and engagement activity, and indeed require directors to indicate how well they feel that they've used that in reaching decisions and taking policy decisions. So that work will now be aggregated up over the summer, and your committee, alongside the other scrutiny committees, Governance and Audit and Cabinet, will start to see the draft of that self-assessment report in the autumn. We've also, as committee will note, made a change to the annual delivery plan this year, where we're putting engagement alongside organisational resilience as a critical challenge for the organisation, and set out a series of actions within this year's annual delivery plan in order that we're responding to that, and put in some additional measures to the corporate performance framework as well, so that when you're receiving the quarterly reports starting from the autumn in terms of performance, you'll be able to see alongside senior leaders how that work and that information is starting to feed into decision making with greater prominence than it has perhaps before.
That's really good to hear, Tom, and hopefully the same report next year will not highlight this as limited assurance. So that's really good work. Thank you. Do we have any other questions, please, on this particular report? Councillor Goodjohn.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask that after the audit regarding the planning committee and the planning governance arrangements, that you're satisfied, Tom, that the recommendations that were put in place have been sufficiently uptaken and that they've been implemented well, as far as you're aware? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Yes, in terms of my knowledge of those recommendations, I can confirm that they've been appropriately responded to in terms of what the service area have set out in response. As you'll know, we provide an organisational response to regulatory recommendations. They require the service area to put them together for approval or acceptance, rather, by Audit Wales before we start tracking them. If you don't mind, I'll go and get the latest position in terms of their being implemented separately. I haven't got it to hand, but I can certainly drop you and the rest of the committee an email tomorrow with the latest position on those. But in terms of the initial response, absolutely, they were appropriate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Any other questions then, please, from committee? No? Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom. We'll move to the recommendations, and they were quite simply that comments on the report are to be referred back to Cabinet from committee. So largely happy with what we've seen, I think, is what our comments will have to be, with also the proviso that Tom will come back with a little bit more of an explanation. So that's great. Can we have a hand to move then, please?
Unless Karen wants
Thank you,
to
Councillor Lock-Edwards and Councillor Hanks. That's great. Karen, did you want to come in?
Yes, please, Chair. Sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit. I just want to check, there were no real comments made. Are you quite happy if we can just email the Cabinet and just say that obviously this report has been accepted and noted, but you asking to get something further because there's no particular comments have been made, so I don't need to make a reference. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Karen. Okay, everyone, let's move swiftly on to agenda item 6. This is the report of the Corporate Director. It's the annual delivery plan monitoring report Q4 performance for 23-2024, and it's back to Tom to take us through this one. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. So, yeah, as you say, this is the end of year report in terms of our corporate performance against the annual delivery plan for 2023-24. And it sets out the achievements against the commitments that are aligned with the Council's 5-year corporate plan wellbeing objectives. There's a presentation which is appended for members, which is intended to give you an overview of the performance earlier on in the calendar year than the members will remember in the past. Ordinarily, we would present this report to members in the past after the summer recess. We're looking to bring it earlier, and we've done that for the last couple of years now. You'll also receive a more detailed performance report as part of that annual self-assessment report that I mentioned earlier on, and that's going to come to your committee in the early autumn, and that will set out more detail, but we thought it was useful for committee members across the 5 scrutiny committees and Cabinet to see it at this stage of the year. The report provides 2 perspectives. The first is around the overall performance of the Council against the annual delivery plan. And at the end of the year, 3 of the 4 wellbeing objectives were attributed an overall green status, with 1 wellbeing objective attributed an amber performance status. And that's because 463 of 507 planned actions that were contained in the annual delivery plan and service plans have been attributed a green performance rating. And when we're looking at performance measures, of 161 measures which were in the framework for this year, 85 had a performance status that was available, and 70% of those were attributed a green status. So that's the kind of picture overall. I mentioned the presentation, which is contained in Appendix A to your report this evening, members, and that gives you the overall performance summary for the annual delivery plan at a council level. And then it goes through, in terms of this scrutiny committee's specific remit, a range of different achievements through the last quarter and indeed the year against each of the wellbeing objectives. It then reintroduces the performance snapshot, which is specific to your scrutiny committee's remit, giving you an overview in terms of the status of actions and performance measures. And then finally, it contains some information relating to areas that we know we need to do further work on, and also areas that are emerging in terms of concern, or things that have cropped up since the annual delivery plan and the service plans were written, but we wanted to raise their profile to yourselves in committee. And then for ease of scrutiny, we've appended Appendix B, the set of performance exceptions. So you'll see those are the ones that have been attributed a red status, either actions or measures. For actions, at the end of the year, we take the approach that an action is either complete and green, or it's not complete and it's red with a sort of 10% tolerance. And members will note that's the reason for seeing no ambers in terms of actions at this stage of the year. We've provided in Appendix C all of the information for context. Wouldn't be expecting elected members to go through this level of detail necessarily, but we wanted to make sure that there was transparency in terms of all of the activities and measures. So that's set out within Appendix C. So then just finally, Chair, in terms of this Scrutiny Committee's remit, 275 out of 306 of the actions that had been set out within your remit were attributed a green status, 30 were attributed a red status. And then turning to the 23 measures where data was available to be reported, 6 a green status, 5 an amber status, and 12 a red status. So we're bringing the report to yourselves alongside all of the other scrutiny committees this month in order for you to scrutinise performance and make any comments referred back to Cabinet for their consideration. And as I say, what we'll also be able to do is incorporate some of the findings from scrutiny's consideration into the annual self-assessment report that's going to be produced over the summer.
Thank you for that, to Tom. There is a lot of information in this report. I know you've commented on that, and I know you've had my views on the no amber status as well. It just feels quite strange to me that you've got 3/4 of green and then all of a sudden you've got a red and it's not met, when you may be very close to it. But you know, we can disagree on these things. Do we have any questions now? We're particularly interested to know what committee thinks about the remedial actions that are going to be taken to mitigate these reds. Is there anything anybody would like to comment on this or ask? Councillor Johnson, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I noted, as you mentioned, it seems strange for things to be green for 3/4 and then to turn red. I understand the rationale, but nonetheless, it does look strange that it seems as if we're on track and all of a sudden we're not. We have to consider whether this is a good reflection of the system. What I wanted to ask a particular question on was in relation to, there's a measure in relation to the percentage of council staff completing Welsh language training and so forth. It states here in the commentary that it's not available yet on IDEV. Is there any update on this? Because obviously people can't do the course if it's not available. And as well, just in relation to establishing the aim or the true figure in relation to people going on Welsh language courses, how are we to understand this? Because 1% of council officers, does it include schools or not schools? might be something between the fairly high numbers. So how do you work in relation to this? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Over to Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. In terms of that IDEV module progress, my colleagues in Equalities are working with colleagues in the organisational development team as recently as the last couple of weeks in order to begin planning that work to get that onto IDEV. There's been some delays outside of OD in terms of making that content available, and we think that that's really important in terms of accessibility of the training courses. It's one of a range of different ways that, as the report says, that we can support staff to learn Welsh. My understanding, but I will confirm it tomorrow and come back to committees, that this relates to non-schools in terms of the staff. The generic module will become available shortly. But we do need to make some progress in terms of that. The report indicates that there are a range of other methods for supporting staff to learn Welsh. What I'll take back as feedback, if Councillor Johnson and committee you would like me to do, is that we need to do some further work in terms of how we bring all of that data together, because I'm aware that we support a number of colleagues across the organisation to learn Welsh through a variety of different training methods. So the numbers in this report will be understated in terms of the actual total, but it's a case of how we collect and combine that data. But I can certainly take that back as something to do some further work on if committee would find it useful.
Thank you very much for the response, Tom. If I may also ask another question around some of the indicators. There's also a mention in relation to social media. And of course, this is changing all the time with algorithms and so forth. Would it be possible to explain a little bit where we're at and what the objectives are going forward for our Twitter or X, Facebook accounts and so forth? Are there any further developments underway? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Absolutely, you've touched on the change in terms of algorithms, and that certainly in terms of Twitter or X has had a big impact on all accounts. I think it's fair to say, including the councils. We actually had a conversation at SLT this week as part of our monthly update in terms of external and internal comms, and we were talking about the role of Twitter or X as part of the suite of social media platforms that we post on. I've got some work underway by the team in communications looking at a range of different options in terms of our use of Twitter. I think it's fair to say what we have been doing is dialing back in terms of the number of tweets that we're putting out. We're focusing in on those kind of organisational wide pieces of work. Certainly as well, some of the work that we would want to share as a kind of sector, because what we are seeing is the engagement is reducing in terms of our residents as part of the changes that have been introduced on that platform. We are exploring whether there is merit in taking one of the subscriptions to Twitter. Some of the early work that has been undertaken in terms of research has been that we haven't found that many other local authorities who've been undertaking that approach, and actually where they have done, their reach and engagement metrics aren't any more successful than ours are. Some of the other changes that Twitter have introduced as a result means that we only now get metrics on individual tweets, whereas previously we would be able to see aggregated information that was easier to analyse. So I think it's a bit of a watching brief in terms of the Twitter account. In terms of Facebook, the algorithm makes changes on a regular basis. And what's interesting there is that we start to see that in certain periods, certainly over the last 12 months, you would find that video-based content would perform particularly well. It would be presented by the platform as a priority to users. That's changed recently, and actually we're starting to see that picture-led content is once again performing better. So the team do keep a very close eye in terms of the engagement that we have with Facebook, and we flex our approach in terms of how we serve up content, and indeed the subjects that we talk about on social media as well, to make sure that they are relevant and engaging. Across all of those, both of those platforms, we track the number of impressions, so the amount of times people see what we're putting in front of them. We then track engagement against each of them, so whether people look at the detail and actually go into the post itself and interact with it. And then we look at the kind of click-through and whether we're successful in directing people to content on the website, for example. That's performing particularly well now on the LinkedIn platform. We were talking at leadership team this week about the success we've seen in advertising jobs in that kind of way as well. So it's very much a changing picture, but one that the team try and keep an eye on. As I say, with Twitter, I think the jury is probably out on that one now.
Thank you, Tom. That's really interesting. Any other questions, committee? Councillor Goodjohn, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask 3 questions. I'll start easy for you, or relatively easy. Tom, we've had slippage on the carbon management plan. Can we get a secure date of when we're going to see the plan?
Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Absolutely. It's scheduled to go to Cabinet after the recess and will be referred to your committee and to Environment and Regeneration Committee based on that report. And I should be more specific, it's going straight after the recess, not just after the recess.
That's good to hear. I'm really glad. Secondly, I wanted to ask around the review of street names and the committee that hasn't been running. We've asked about this before, and there seems to have been little progress. Is this going to be, are we seeing any improvement since this report in the end of April? And are we going to see any progress this year?
Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. I think it is fair to say that that work hasn't been progressed as we would have initially wanted to in the timescales that we would have wanted to. However, the work that is underway in terms of County of Sanctuary is reflecting some of the principles as part of that review. The report is going to Cabinet tomorrow, setting out how we're taking forward the County of Sanctuary work. But certainly we are still committed to exploring that work around street names, monuments, etc. And I'll work with my colleagues in Democratic Services to get an update in terms of where we are with convening that working group to take those next steps, and perhaps consider that in the context of the work around County of Sanctuary and the action plan that will accompany that.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Can I push you to do that as soon as reasonably possible, because this is something that's been on the agenda, as was just mentioned by Councillor Johnson, for 4 years, and there's been no improvement really that I could see on this. So if we can try and get any kind of progress, any kind of update would be good to see. The final thing I wanted to mention was on the customer inquiries resolved at first contact, which is dramatically decreased. I haven't seen any kind of remedial actions regarding that, or any kind of explanation as to why. Do we have any idea as to why that's dramatically decreased this year in this quarter? or is there any action that's being considered in order to try and improve that within C1V? I know we're going to get an update later in the year, but that is quite a long way away.
Thank you, Councillor John. That is one area that that we are definitely progressing, and as you say, there's approximately a 10 percentage point reduction in performance across the year. I think it's also fair to say that it's 3% with 3 percentage points within target though as well. So whilst there it has been a reduction in performance over the last year, it's still close to the council's target of 80%. I think there's a range of different reasons for first point of contact reduction, and some of that is as a result of an increase in complexity of inquiries coming through, so things that require some work and some callback for customers. But I think what I could do, if it's useful, is make sure that as part of a couple of things. One, I know we're due to bring you a report in the autumn winter in terms of customer relations as an update following consideration by committee previously, and I can ask the operational manager then to elaborate on first point of contact resolution and the overall inquiries. And secondly, we're going to be putting some of that data into the annual complaints and compliments report that will go to Governance and Audit Committee to show the level of requests coming into the council for all types of services, to put complaints and compliments in some context. So I can certainly look to explore that if committee would find that useful in both of those ways.
Yeah, that's good, Tom. And can I ask for some kind of commentary in the next time that this report comes to us regarding the review of street names and buildings? That would be good to see any kind of work being done to progress that, because there has been none.
Certainly, no problem at all. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn, and thank you, Tom. Yes, I think we will look forward to that report on the complaints process with C1V in the autumn. There has been a lot of activity, as you said, and I think we need to drill down to exactly what is going on in terms of reported complaints, time it takes to resolve complaints, and first call resolution and all of that. That's really an important area for us, I think. So yeah, we'll look forward to that report. Do we have any other questions, please, for Tom? No? Okay, everybody. Thank you very much. So the recommendations were that committee considers the report and any of our comments go back to Cabinet for their consideration. So if, Karen, you can capture those comments, that would be all of the comments, that would be great. Can we have a hand then to move from this item? Thank you.
Happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Thank you. And a seconder? Well, I'll second it. It's fine. Okay, everybody. Let's move on. Oh, thank you, Councillor Hanks. Thank you. Move on to agenda item 7. That's items that the chair's decided are urgent, part 1. You'll be pleased to know there aren't any. Part 2, any other items, agenda item 8, that I've decided are urgent, and we don't have any of those. So that brings us to the end of this meeting. So I want to thank everybody for their participation. Wish you all a very pleasant evening, and just remind you that the next meeting now, because we have a recess next month, won't be until September the 18th, I believe. Is that right, Karen? Have we got that right?
Yeah, that's correct, Chair.
Yeah, great. So for all of you, please stay safe and enjoy your summer. And we'll meet again in the autumn. Thank you. Night, everybody.